Yeah, happy Monday. Is there such thing as a happy Monday though? I mean, come on now. Some of them are okay. Some of them not so much. Monday typically is my least favorite day of the week. Running an hour behind tonight, pushed it back an hour due to the schedule release. Um, we already got somebody ready for opening day, but yeah, pushed it back an hour for the schedule release. Let that thing come out before we jumped on, but not gonna dig too deep into the schedule. I've only took one real quick look at it. Not surprised to see Florida State early. I figure the league's probably halfway anticipating a rematch in Charlotte in ACC championship game. Get that regular season matchup out of the way early. You got the whole rest of the regular season to build up to that rematch, hype it up, um, promote it, and if it does play out that way, you might have it could end up potentially being the biggest ACC championship game to date. You know, I know the Notre Dame Clemson one was a big one back in 2020. That one will always have a little asterisk beside it though, because Notre Dame, that was the only year they've been a full-time member. I think the schedule kind of sets up nicely for Clemson. Open date right in a good place. Seems like they kind of spread out the bigger name opponents throughout the schedule. Florida State early, then North Carolina State the next month. But then you end with South Carolina and North Carolina the last two games. I kind of like the way they laid it out for Clemson here. Again, I've only took a quick look at it. I didn't do a deep dive into it yet, but yeah, Notre Dame coming to Clemson's always big, but we already knew that one. That was one of the handful we already knew about. But that anytime Notre Dame comes to Clemson, that's going to be a big time event. Tell us what happened this weekend. Was there something going on this weekend? Oh, yeah, Clemson held one of their bigger recruiting events of the year this weekend, huh? Have already, you know, seen the fruits of some of that labor pay off with a couple of commitments. Champ Thompson, defensive tackle, blue chip guy, pulled the trigger fairly, quickly. Late Saturday night, didn't even wait for him to do an edit, make him one of these things he could post on social media. He was ready to do it. I think this is a big time pickup for Clemson. They just keep reloading along that defensive line, and he's another piece to that. I think Clemson will take just two defensive tackles. So the other guy you're looking at after him would be obviously Heaven Brown Schuler. I think they took another step forward with him. Don't think his recruitment's coming to an end yet. Still really like where Clemson sits with him, though. This is one of those where slow and steady might win the race. Also got a commitment from Noah Dixon. He's a guy that I've long thought would end up at Clemson, but he's a guy, he doesn't do interviews. He doesn't talk to media. So it's really hard to get a good read on him. I thought he was a possibility to commit pretty much at any time. I could have seen it coming this week, next month. He's just hard to get a good read on. Another big time guy. He's rated as highly as in the top 100 by one of the services. I think 24/7 has him rated a little lower than Rivals, but Mickey Kahn's definitely got some playmakers to work with there at safety, and I think Clemson's only going to take two in this cycle, so that kind of leaves you. It'd be interesting to see if KJ Bolden and Mike Matthews, who are both top 10 talents wanted to jump on board, I don't see you telling either one of those guys no. Mike Matthews was not able to make it in this weekend. He was supposed to come, but some kind of conflict kept him from being able to make it. So he was a late scratch. Bolden did make it in. Bolden's a kid that all of the big time schools are after him. It's a recruitment that's going to stretch out for a while. Certainly wouldn't call Clemson a favorite by any stretch, but they didn't do anything to hurt their chances with him this weekend. They only helped their cause. I would probably put them in that top group, just not at the top. I would feel a lot better about their chances with Matthews as we sit here today over Bolden. But, all the returns from this weekend have been positive, really good. I think they really helped themselves with Walker White, quarterback, the only quarterback that was on hand this weekend, one of two uncommitted quarterbacks with a offer. I've kind of been a little hesitant to say a whole heck of a lot about where I thought Clemson stood with him until he got to campus and got to spend some time with Garrett Riley, see what their specific plans for him were. And now that that's happened, I think Clemson has really positioned themselves well here. I could see a scenario playing out in which his recruitment doesn't last a whole heck of a lot longer. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to play out that way. I'm just saying I could see a scenario in which it does. I could also see it playing out into the spring and he takes a few more visits just to be sure and ends up circling back and coming to Clemson again. We'll see how it plays out, but I think Clemson really solidified themselves this weekend. I would even go as far as calling them the favorite as we sit here today. But anybody that follows recruiting knows things can change in a hurry. Sometimes emotions play especially coming off of a visit, emotions can be high. So let's see where we are in 2 weeks. And, he's not taking any more visits. Obviously, we're in a dead period now. But, after you come down off the high of those emotions and those kind of things, still really like what Clemson did here with White over the weekend. Talked to Alex Taylor today, one of the two wide receivers that was there. Talked to me a little bit about Garrett Riley. Said he absolutely sees Riley as the type of offensive coordinator and play caller who can get him to the next level. And that's what you want to hear recruits say, because that's what all these kids' goal is, to get to the NFL. Got to like where you stand with him. Told me he probably wouldn't commit till July. He would probably take some June official visits. But then he also added in at the end that he could see himself committing earlier. So we'll see how it goes. I think he's probably going to trim his list down some here next couple of weeks. He put out a tweet yesterday with the little scissors in it. So I imagine he's going to trim his list down some. But Clemson, North Carolina State battle, I would absolutely call Clemson the favorite at this point. The other wide receiver on hand was Braylon Staley from right here in Aiken. Just recently picked up an offer. This is one I think is going to play out a little bit longer. I like where Clemson stands with him too, but his recruitment is really starting to pick up right now. Offers are really starting to roll in. He's probably going to let the process play out some. But if you're Clemson, you really got to like where you stand with him. Sometimes, again, like I said earlier, slow and steady wins the race. All in all, it was a good weekend. I think still waiting to hear from the running back that was on hand this weekend. Me and him's kind of been playing phone tag today, trying to get in contact with each other. David Zuimum, I think I'm pronouncing that right, but he's Clemson's only offer at running back, and that's done by design. They want him to feel like the priority, like he is the guy. He's from North Cobb in Georgia, and this is a recruitment that I think logistics is going to play a big factor. I think he wants to stay close to home. Obviously, this is one that's kind of coming down to Clemson and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech actually got him back to campus on another visit Sunday after he left Clemson. He was just at Georgia Tech the weekend prior. They wanted to get him back on campus to try to halt any momentum Clemson might have gotten with him Saturday. So he took 2 visits over the weekend, and Georgia Tech kind of got the last crack. But again, he's the lone running back offer for a reason. They want him to know that he is the only target, not the priority, but the only target. He is their guy, and they are all in on him. And sometimes that sells with kids, but you can only let it sell for so long. Not saying he's on the clock or anything, but at a certain point, you got to expand the board if a guy's not willing to pull the trigger and jump on board. So we'll see how much longer they let it ride out with him. I still think Clemson probably. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call them the favorite for him too at this point. I'm not saying they are a big time favorite. I think they are a little ahead of Georgia Tech at this point. Jonathan Paylor was not on hand this weekend, so nothing new to really report on him. There's been a lot of talk that he and Alex Taylor would like to both play together at the next level, but I don't think that is something they are dead set on making happen. We'll see how it plays out, but he was not there this weekend. So nothing really new to bring you on him. Everybody I've talked to so far have had nothing but glowing reviews of Garrett Riley. Even Sammy, I even asked Sammy Brown about him. I know he's a linebacker; he doesn't play offense, but and Sammy Brown even called him the perfect fit for Clemson, and he's the perfect fit from a cultural standpoint, personality standpoint. He's just a perfect fit. Period. I think Dabo knocked it out the park with this hire. Absolutely. I did a story on Sam. We published it earlier today on Sammy, and I think his recruitment is probably starting to wind down too. He told me that he was going to take some official visits in June, and then would probably make a decision after that. I'm not 100% sold we make it that far. He didn't tell me this, but I have heard from some other sources that he's getting to the end. He's been going through this process for a long time now. He's one of the top players in the country. He's arguably the top linebacker in the class. Kind of coming down to Clemson, Georgia. You might throw Tennessee in there, but I think Clemson and Georgia are the 2 favorites. And I think there are a lot of things that Sammy Brown really likes about Clemson. Also thinks there are a lot of things that he likes about Georgia. Going to be interesting to see which way this one falls. I don't have a real good feeling either way, which way he's leaning. He doesn't give off any vibes. He plays those things kind of close to the vest. Not a lot. People around him don't say a whole lot about which way he's leaning. Maybe he's not leaning either way. Maybe he just doesn't know yet. But on the other hand, if you're Clemson, you gotta like where you sit with him at this point, because this is a kid that is really big on culture, and nobody does culture better than Clemson. I'm not saying that the culture of Georgia is bad or anything like that, because Kirby Smart's done an excellent job with the culture at Georgia. It's just different. Clemson's culture is, I would call it unique. It's different than any other school in the country. I mean, he talks about how the practices at Clemson are different the way the players practice is different from the other schools he goes to. The way the players pick up the trash on the field after practice, those kind of things. I mean, these are the little things that stick out with a kid like Sammy Brown. Is it enough to reel him in at the end? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But I do really like Clemson's chances as we sit here today. They are absolutely no worse than 50-50. Blake Franks. Yes, he was in town too. This one is getting interesting. I actually expected Franks to commit before the end of the year. Then he kind of pumped the brakes, went to South Carolina, and they gave him reason to, pause. They gave him reason to pause. Gave him something to think about. He's been back there since. He's been back to Clemson a couple of times since. I'm sure everybody saw the comments he made in a couple of interviews last week after his South Carolina visit. They were kind of eye-opening. Talking about South Carolina was more family-oriented, said they had the better engineering school, which that's just not factually correct. But, it gives you an idea of what they are selling him on. I also know that one of the things that they are selling him on is the fact that his former teammate Colin Sadler, who was a freshman at Clemson, redshirted last season, and that if he comes to South Carolina, he's not going to redshirt. So I mean, all kind of things going into this. I'm not sure I'm buying all this South Carolina talk just yet. Again, I do think they have given him something to think about. I'm not going as far as calling him a South Carolina lean. I still think when it comes down to it, when it comes time to make a decision, I think Franks is going to end up at Clemson. And that's just my opinion. It's not based on any intel, but I base that just on the feeling I get from some of the things I hear and some of the people I talk to. But nobody's told me he's coming to Clemson or anything like that. It's just my opinion. It's just my gut. I'm just not buying some of the stuff that's out there. That there's a lot of, especially I call them smoke screens. You don't ever know what's a smoke screen and what's not a smoke screen. Franks has been eyeing a decision date of sometime in early February. Now he's saying he might go a little bit longer. I still think we're going to have a decision sometime before the middle of February. But I still really feel good about where Clemson sits with him. Might turn out that I'm absolutely way off the mark on this, but as we sit here today, I still like where Clemson sits. And again, nobody's told me he's coming to Clemson, anything like that. Just based on some of the things that I hear, I just think Clemson wins out in the end. And I do think it's a decision that he's struggling with. At one time, Clemson was far and away the leader in the clubhouse, so they have absolutely made this thing a legitimate battle. Make no mistake. I just think in the end, Clemson will win out. Champ Thompson talked to us a little bit about the defensive tackle commit from yesterday. Yeah, talked a little bit of him at the top. Champ Thompson kind of caught me off guard. I was actually on the road when he committed. Nobody commits at 11:30 at night or whatever time it was. But I was actually caught a little off guard with his commitment. I'll be absolutely honest with you. Was not expecting it. Thought Clemson was in good shape with him, make no mistake. Just wasn't sure he was going to pull the trigger that quickly. I thought he might take a little bit of time to make sure But turns out Saturday was all he needed. That was the icing on the cake. I think Clemson's probably led for him throughout. Georgia was the other one that was really involved. But again, Clemson just keeps restocking talent along that defensive line. He's just another piece to that. He's a top 250 guy. And this time next year, he's probably going to move up in the rankings. We'll see. I don't put a whole lot of stock into those rankings anymore after what some of them have done with Peter Woods, but we'll see how it plays out. Staley and Taylor were the only wide receivers at junior day. Ryan Wingo, TJ Moore, and Paylor are both expected back in March. So, all three are expected back in March. So, just because they weren't there this time, don't read a whole lot into that. I think Clemson's going to take just 2 wide receivers in this cycle. I could see a scenario in which they take 3, but the number right now I think is 2. And I really do think Alex Taylor eventually becomes a part of the class at some point. So, and I think actually, no, I take that back. I think Clemson's probably going to take 3 wide receivers in this class. So if you get Taylor, Staley, and then one of those other 3 guys, I think you're looking at a heck of a wide receiver class. That's nothing to turn your nose up at. Yeah, see, I can't answer that, man. I'm just going to have to say Will Vandervoort's absolutely the worst snore. Make no mistake, Will Vandervoort. And I will not comment further on that one. Nothing about how I know that. Anything. Paylor is going where Taylor is. You know what? That's some people think that. We'll see how it plays out. I'm not 100% sure that's how it plays out. It might, but I don't think that it's a 100% foregone conclusion. I think if you could get Paylor, Taylor, Staley, that's a hell of a wide receiver class. Paylor is extremely dynamic. He's one of those slot guys, quick as a hiccup. He can take the top off the defense. Is very explosive. If that's your 3-man class, I'd take that all day long if I'm a Clemson fan. The offensive lineman from Dillon, Josiah Thompson. He was at junior day too. Strong Gamecock lean, has been from the start. He goes to Dillon. Dillon has consistently been a pipeline into South Carolina. For whatever reason, those Dillon players go to South Carolina. Thompson grew up South Carolina fan, family South Carolina fans. And I absolutely believe that's where he's going to end up. I will say this. I think he has been very open-minded and given Clemson every opportunity to change his mind about going to South Carolina, even though I think it was going to be next to impossible to change his mind. I think he's given them a fair chance at changing his mind. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think that's just how, rooted he is with the Gamecocks. If you grow up a fan of one school, can you see yourself, and you got an opportunity to go play football there, and that's been your dream your whole life, can you see yourself turning that down to go play for their most hated rival? Some kids do that, but very few, especially in this state. Yeah, I can't answer that for you. Thomas Oz has been in the job 1 year. Why people like to complain. I thought Thomas Austin knocked it out of the park with his first recruiting class. Was the offensive line elite last year? No. You had a freshman starting at one tackle spot. You had a guy playing center for the first time in his career. So there were absolutely going to be some growing pains. You had a sophomore starting at one of the guard spots. Some young guys up there, and even though Putnam's not inexperienced, he was inexperienced at playing center. I don't think the offensive line play was as bad as it's made out to be sometimes. It wasn't great at all times, make no mistake. But I think Thomas Austin's going to be just fine. And let's assume for a minute, play devil's advocate and say Blake Franks ends up at South Carolina and you miss on him. Recruiting is not about the guys you miss on. It's about the guys you get. So if you go out and find one better, it doesn't really matter that you missed on this guy. We'll see what he ends up with in this class. I think Clemson's probably going to take as many as 4 offensive linemen. But I've been, as me personally, I think Thomas Austin's off to a great start at Clemson. He gets lumped in as being one of these in-house promotions, but technically that's not true. I guess he was promoted from within after coming back and working with Robbie Caldwell for a year, but prior to that, he had been an offensive line coach elsewhere. It wasn't like he came up through the coaching ranks in Clemson. He had been out elsewhere, came back for a year, then got the offensive line job. Yeah, touched on White a minute ago. I said I could see a scenario in which he pulls the trigger maybe before March. Not sure. I mean, I could see a scenario in which that plays out that way. I can also see it playing out to where he holds off a little bit and rides it out into March, maybe as late as April. So ain't nothing definitive on that. I mean, I could see this one winding. I could see it playing out to where it's winding down soon, though. I think Clemson made that much headway with him this weekend. People pull up David Azuimum. I know I'm butchering his last name. They pull him up at 24/7 and see 24/7 hasn't rated him, and they killed a guy. Because 24/7 hasn't rated him yet. That doesn't mean that this guy's no good. That just means nobody's evaluated him yet. If you go over to 24/7's competitor, Rivals, they've got the guy as one of the 5 best all-purpose backs in the country. He's a top 200, top 200 player, if I'm not mistaken, overall, regardless of position. Better yet, go watch the film. The kid can play, man. He is good. But people just pull out that 24/7 and see he's not being rated, and they start dumping on Spiller about not being able to recruit, and the same old narrative gets regurgitated. Yeah, Brady. No, you have to go back. I talked about him for 5 minutes a few minutes ago. If you want to go back and watch it, but short answer, no. That's just my opinion. I don't think he ends up there. Any baseball fans on here tonight? Usually we have a couple. Take that as a no. Tavoy was recruited as a cornerback. Now that doesn't mean he couldn't move at some point, but I mean he was recruited as a corner. That's where I see him playing. Drew Wood has also picked up his offer this weekend. You know, another guy I think probably ends up at Clemson, but I don't think this is one that's nearing the end anytime soon. Talked to him last night, and he's going to take some more visits. I know he's going to – Oklahoma's recruiting him hard, and he really likes Brent Venables. But I think in the end, Clemson ends up winning out on him too. Still, long ways to go yet with him. Probably, as I've said many times here before, you know, think how good Wade Wood has looked as a freshman for Clemson. Drew's probably a little more polished than he is, a little bit further along than he was at the same point in his high school career. So that's saying a lot. Oh, okay. We do got a couple baseball fans on here. Yeah, I went to the scrimmages Friday and Saturday. I didn't stay for Sundays, thankfully. I was planning to. Then at 10 minutes to 11, the scrimmage Sunday was supposed to start at 2. 10:50 a.m., I get an email saying that it had been moved up to 11. So 10 minutes, you know, I would have had 10 minutes to get there, but thankfully I came on Saturday night instead because I'd have never made it. But both the scrimmages were dominated by pitching for the most part. You know, Eric Backett just said on multiple occasions when he's spoken to the media and he's talked about what he's looking for in his starting pitchers. He wants guys that can throw strikes, who pound the strike zone. I think he had to be happy with what he saw because pitchers were throwing strikes. The only guy that really got lit up was Nick Hoffman. He gave up 3 runs, 5 hits, didn't even go 2 innings. Cooper Ingle hit a couple of solo shots Saturday. Those are the only 2 home runs. Not a lot of hits, not a lot of walks. It was dominated by the pitching. Casey Talent looked real good. Oh, man, I'm drawing blanks here. I'm trying to think of who all pitched. Hold on just a second. I got notes here that I took. But each pitcher pitched 2 innings. And I do remember this off the top of my head. I thought Ty Olenchuk looked like the best of the bunch over the weekend. He was absolutely dominant. His fastball was hitting 95 consistently. He struck out Caden Grice looking, and he struck out Cooper Ingle. He was the only guy to retire Ingle on Saturday. Austin Gordon started Friday night. Gave up a run in his 2 innings, and the hitters were making good contact off of him, but they were hitting it right at guys. Let's see who has Jay Deal. Jay Deal looked good. Ryan Ammons looked good. You know, he's transitioning from closer to starter. Actually, Deal started Friday night, not Gordon. Gordon might have started. I can't remember. So many guys pitched. Willie Weiss looked really good. He transferred from Michigan. He came in relief of Ammons after 2 innings. Jackson Lindley pitched. I think he gave up a run, maybe. Walked 1 guy, but I think there were 2 walks both days combined. So, again, pitchers were throwing strikes, and that's what he wants to see. Hoffman was the only guy that really got hit hard. I say it different every time. Supposed to talk to him today sometime, man. I've been dying to get him on the phone because I want to know how to say his last name because I'm tired of butchering it. I've been saying it. Azuimume. You know, it's EZIOMUME. Azuimume. I'm not 100% sure how to say it. I usually talk to him by text, and I've never asked him how to pronounce his name, and I need to do that. No, I've not heard anything about Troy Stellato and where he is in his recovery. And I hadn't heard that he's had any setbacks or anything, so I'm assuming he's full steam ahead. We'll probably find some more out in the spring. I'll tell you what I noticed. To me, and I should have touched on this a minute ago, I think Monty relied heavily on the analytics. You know, he was very analytic driven. You know, launch angles and spin rates and those kind of things. You know, he wanted everybody hitting line drives to all areas of the field. He didn't spend a lot of time focusing on any kind of small ball. And while I didn't go to a lot of actual practices while Monty Lee was coach, I just don't get the feeling that bunting and those small ball type of things were worked on a lot, like hitting to the opposite field, situational base or certain situational base running things, like rundowns and how not to get picked off, avoid getting picked off, and those kind of things. And I think Erik Bakich is very focused on the details. He's very detail oriented. He focuses on the little things. Friday and Saturday, they spent an enormous amount of time on bunting. The first hour of practice Friday was all bunting. Every half inning of both scrimmages Friday and Saturday started off with the first hitter attempting to lay down a bunt. And then when he did, they would work on different situations of where the runner was supposed to go with the ball. They put a runner on base, those kind of things. And they got some work to do, don't get me wrong, but the results were mostly positive. There were a couple of errant throws here and there, but, you know, overall the results were positive. So I think we'll see when you ask about philosophical differences, I think we'll see more of making an effort to hit to the opposite field when the situation calls for it. I think you'll see more of an emphasis placed on bunting when the situation calls for it. Because, you know, the analytics say that bunting is a waste of an out. And some of these younger coaches buy into that. I don't think Bakich does. I'm not saying he doesn't use the analytics, because he does. I just don't think he uses them as the be-all, end-all. You got to have a happy medium somewhere. And I think that's where Bakich has really excelled, is kind of finding that middle ground. To me, that's the biggest differences that I've noticed so far. And he wants his starting pitchers to throw strikes. Clemson's had issues with their pitchers throwing strikes consistently over the tail end of Monty Lee's tenure. Friday and Saturday, those guys were pounding the strike zone. Again, I only remember 2 walks off the top of my head. And Bakich was actually calling the balls and the strikes, and he was not being generous with the strike zone. He had a pretty small one, and they were pounding the plate. right, I think I touched on everything. Uh, Back to the schedule. I missed this one earlier. 5 away and 4 at home down the stretch. Play at UNC, North Carolina State, and UVA. How many wins do you think Clemson needs to win the regular season? Look, I think Florida State's going to be really good next year. You know, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but heck, who knows? They might even be the media darlings come summer and be voted in to win the ACC. We'll see. But they sure are getting a ton of hype right now. How many wins do I think Clemson needs to win the regular season? I don't think you can have more than one ACC loss. And if you have more than one, you might be in trouble making it to Charlotte. I mean, seeing as, they're going to divisionless. If you have two, you're playing with fire. You better not drop more than one in league play if you want to be sure that you're going to lock up a spot in Charlotte. You drop two, you're leaving your destiny in somebody else's hands. I was kind of expecting FSU to be early because, again, I think I touched on this earlier. I'm sure they are anticipating a Clemson-Florida State rematch in the ACC championship game. You get that regular season matchup out the way early. You can use the entire rest of the regular season to promote it, hype up the rematch, because it's probably going to be a top 10, possibly a top 5 matchup early in the season. And if it ends up being a good game, that's a lot to work with when it comes to your promotion, when it comes to promoting that game in December. But I was fully expecting it to be pretty early. Yeah, Bakich is a stickler for the details. Again, they were working on a lot of little things on the cutoff. Which cutoff man to hit, where the throw is supposed to go to in certain situations. A lot of little things. It was good to see Jack Leggett back out there. He's working with hitters some. I think player development is his official title. I don't think he's going to be in the dugout during games and stuff, but if he's working with the hitters, to me that's a good thing. Because he's a Hall of Fame baseball coach. He's not forgotten how to coach. Boston College tomorrow night in basketball. Yeah. They won one. They won another one. They had no business winning Saturday down there in Tallahassee. Stole another one. At a certain point, it's going to catch up to them. They are fortunate to keep winning some of these games the way they've been winning them. Getting, Chase Hunter back, absolutely helps. As soon as you get him back, you lose Brevin Galloway. He's not going to be available Saturday, for this game tomorrow night. It's not Saturday, Tuesday. He's not going to be available. I just got a bad feeling about that game tomorrow night. I don't have a good feeling about it. I don't know why. Just something in my gut tells me it's time for him to drop one. I was kind of expecting it to happen Saturday in Tallahassee because that place has been a house of horrors for Brad Brownell's teams. And it almost was again Saturday. But we'll see. Boston College has been playing better. I think they got one of their guys back who's been hurt, been playing a little bit better. Who am I expecting to pick up from junior day? I can't answer that, man. I think, I hit on all the guys I thought Clemson made a lot of big time traction with. I've hit on them already. Those are the guys I think Clemson really made traction with. I don't think I left anybody out. Let me go back to my notes here. One I didn't mention was Ashton Hampton, a quarterback, a cornerback. I think Clemson made some headway with him. He's from Tallahassee, kind of been considered a Florida State lean. I think Clemson made some headway with him. But as far as guys that I'm expecting them to pick up, I don't have anybody circled in for definitely for sure as of this point. I feel good about their chances with some guys, but, it's hard to say 100%. I think they may, again, like I said earlier, I think they made a ton of headway with Walker White, probably put themselves in position to land him, made themselves the leader as of right now, probably. Think they did well with Sammy Brown. Told me his visit just reinforced everything he already knew about Clemson. Guys like Alex Taylor, wide receiver, Braylon Staley, wide receiver. I think they helped themselves with offensive lineman Jamison Riggs, Emilio Argard, who he teased a bunch of fans into thinking he was going to commit Saturday night. I don't think he commits before the summer, but really do think Clemson is in good shape with him. But again, Clemson's already taken one corner. Not sure they're going to take more than one more. So it's going to be a first come, first serve type deal, I think. Who do I think will be the left tackle? I could see you got some options there. I could see Blake Miller moving over. Well, I could see Tristan Lee sliding into that role. So, you got some options. So I think those are two of the top candidates, though. Either Blake Miller slides over, and Tristan Lee plays on the right side, or Tristan Lee just moves in at left tackle. I'm not sure what the plan is for sure yet. They might not know for sure yet. That might not be decided till we get through spring, maybe. All right. With that, I will bid y'all farewell. I smell my dinner in there. Appreciate all y'all tuning in. Keep your eyes on the site, allclemsontigers.com. I'm going to have a lot more recruiting stuff coming this week. Still got a couple interviews we haven't published yet, hoping to get at least one more. I'll have another junior day right up after I get all my intel back. Still waiting on some stuff to come in. So be on the lookout for that. As always, appreciate y'all tuning in. See y'all next Monday.